Okay, so today we are going to be ranking these Souls games based off of the multiplayer that they offer. So without further ado, let's begin. Let's go down the line. Let's begin with Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 1 is going to go at a C tier for its multiplayer. See, multiplayer in Souls games is kind of an integral part for me. I love playing this game with friends. I love invading people. I love doing all that stuff. And Dark Souls 1, in my opinion, just does it the weakest, especially with the area designs where everything is like interconnected and it's not in a linear fashion as of Dark Souls 3. The multiplayer really struggles because there's a lot of areas and moments in the game where it'd be super fun to play through with another person, but you just can't. And there are also plenty of areas that just don't feel worth going through together, like Blighttown is one, even though it's one of my favorite areas. I think it is not fit for multiplayer. Lost Izalith is another one because there's a whole pool of lava and you are not going to want to go through that with your friend. Like you might want to fight Bed of Chaos with your friend, but that's really it. I think the first few areas like Undeadburg and shoot, what's it called? The forest area, like with Seath and whatnot, and even the DLC, I think those areas are pretty fun to go through in multiplayer, but that's like three areas out of however many are in Dark Souls 1. So Dark Souls 1 lands itself at a solid C tier. We're going to make this D, but I might put it in D tier. No, I'll keep it in C because it has some enjoyable moments, but not a lot. I am known for having controversial opinions. Well, not really known, but I have controversial opinions about the Souls games. Dark Souls 2 is going all the way up an S based off of its multiplayer. I did a multiplayer playthrough just last month in December with a friend of mine, and it was the most fun I've ever had with Dark Souls 2. Like, it was seriously one of the best gaming experiences I've had in a while. It was just so fun, and Dark Souls 2 in general is a very underrated gem of a Souls game, in my opinion. I've just really enjoyed it. I really liked it. Going through all the areas was really fun. I think we only skipped like maybe one or two areas together. Like we skipped a couple, but that was really it. And it was always like the really small areas. But going through the Forest of the Fallen Giants, the Lost no, Bastille, Lost Bastille, fighting all of the bosses together, going through the Shaded Woods together, going through. We haven't went through the DLCs yet, but we're gonna get to that. But going all of the areas in this game, in my opinion, I think Dark Souls 2 has some really good areas, and it doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. I think it's very unjust, especially when it comes to the area design, because I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's actually better than Dark Souls 1 and more fun to go through. Dark Souls 2's co-op, it just works so well. It is really easy, mind you. I think Dark Souls 2 is one of the easier entries in the series, and you guys, a lot of people say the game's bullshit, and I can completely see what you mean. I think the game can be bullshit in some moments, but from my experience, it works pretty well. This one guy I talked to, he said Dark Souls 2 is weird because it's almost like that meme where like every copy of this video game is like personalized, like with the Mario 64 thing, where every copy of Dark Souls 2 is personalized and everyone has a different experience and completely different view on the mechanics. But the online play is just phenomenal. You should really try it out. It's so fun to just co-op with a buddy and screw around. It's so fun that a video on the internet, Happy Souls, based solely off of this, You know, playing through Dark Souls 2 actually feels like that Happy Souls video in moments. It's so fun, and the fact that the game is janky makes it 10 times as more fun because sometimes you and your friend, you'll just have these stupid moments happen. And in Dark Souls 2, since it's so easy to create a build with the weird leveling up system where it costs barely any souls, I think that makes online play even more fun because I never felt like I was under leveled. I never felt like I was too powerful, and the build I went with is my signature build in any of the Souls games. It's a Miracle Pyromancy hybrid, and he went with like a Strength Pyromancy hybrid as well, and Sorcery. And it was really fun. Our builds meshed together perfectly. They complemented each other very well. Solid game, solid online play. Elden Ring, it goes in C tier. I wait. Okay, here's the thing with Elden Ring. If you use the like free co-op, like the open world co-op, easily A or S tier. But if you have just the standard co-op of the game, it's like C or D for me. We're actually gonna add a row below, and we're just gonna call this one like Purgatory. It's in between. I can't really decide. I don't really like Elden Ring as a whole. Two unpopular opinions have been shared. Dark Souls 2 is one of my favorite Souls games, and Elden Ring is one of my least favorite Souls game. Actually, it's my least favorite Souls game in general. It's pretty. I've already made a video about this, and I might make like an updated video to it at some point. But Elden Ring co-op, it's kind of the same thing as Dark Souls 1, where it just feels like wasted potential, especially since you're in this open world. And me personally, I was super excited for Elden Ring co-op and Elden Ring in general. So when I actually tried to give the co-op a shot, it just felt lackluster to me. It just felt boring. It felt unfleshed out. It was not very good. I don't have much to say about it. Now, Bloodborne, where I thought Bloodborne was pretty solid when it came to multiplayer. So, if anyone's been watching my channel for a little over a year now, you'll understand that Bloodborne isn't my most liked Souls game. I like it more than Elden Ring, but before Elden Ring came out, Bloodborne was honestly my least favorite Souls game, and don't hate it. I don't think it's a bad game. It's just something about it doesn't click or mesh well with me. So when I played co-op with the same friend, I've played through all these games with him. When I played co-op with the same friend, it was surprisingly fun. It made the game much more enjoyable to go through with a friend. And I think the online, like using your insight and stuff, it's the same thing as using humanity, but it is a little weird to get used to at first, like especially with the bell ringing system. Like it did cause a little bit of jank between our online sessions, but overall it was a really fun, really solid, good time. One of my biggest issues with Bloodborne is I feel like the areas and the design of said areas are kind of okay. Well, let me more so say this. The design of the areas are reminiscent of Dark Souls 1, and I love the design of Dark Souls 1's areas, the layers, the interconnectivity of it. I love that, but the areas themselves I didn't enjoy that much, but going through with a buddy definitely made them enjoyable. If I were to ever play Bloodborne again, it would be with a friend, it would be with a buddy, because it just makes the game 10 times more enjoyable. It makes boss fights, especially boss fights against like the big visceral enemies that are screeching, and the final boss, Gehrman, very fun with a buddy. just taking turns, whacking at him, working together. That is one of the things I love about Dark Souls co-op, just working together to fight a boss or to clear an area. Demon Souls is gonna go in D for I haven't tried it because Demon Souls multiplayer is basically non-existent. I know when the PS5 came out, it was a hit. Really big online community, and they had that whole secret they said would take years to figure out, but they figured it out. The community figured it out in like 2 days. And, you know, one of Demon Souls, this is where Dark Souls 3 took its inspiration from. One of the things about Demon Souls is one of the bosses, if you're connected to the servers, you can actually fight a person online as a boss. And Dark Souls 3 even does this, but this happens much more often in Dark Souls 3, because I've played Dark Souls 3 recently in the Church of Eleonora. In fact, I'm actually still playing through Dark Souls 3 co-op. I'm recording this video. I'm not finished. We're in the Ring City, but we've played enough so I can determine its placement. But with Demon Souls, since the online community is so inactive, you might as well not even worry about a boss invading you as a human in that world, because it's such a super cool mechanic. And I like that they brought it back into 3 for the DLC, and heck, if they had that in the main game like Demon Souls, I think it'd be really cool. But they don't have that, which is very unfortunate. However, Sekiro doesn't have online. So, but going back to Demon Souls real quick, sorry. I would like to try the online for this someday. I might see if I can play the online with my friend again. I mean, for the first time at some point. But it's just, I don't think that's going to happen, even though I want to experience it. And I don't know how it would work with Demon Souls. But we have our final game, Dark Souls 3. I'm putting it in A tier. See, here's the thing. This would be S tier if you asked me a couple years ago when I first played Dark Souls 3 online. But now it's A tier. Having played this game so many times, playing it with a friend does make it more refreshing. I'm willing to bet I have like 400 hours alone in Dark Souls 3 across my old PlayStation and PC. So I have played the game a good bit. And online is always fun, and I think Dark Souls 2 and 3 have an edge in the co-op due to its more linear experience. Dark Souls 2 is more open, and I think in some ways more open than Dark Souls 1. But even though it's open, you know, it still has kind of a linear format in most cases. Where Dark Souls 3, aside from like 2 moments in the game, it's all point A to point B. So the fact that it's point A to point B, it makes it very easy to co-op together, and it makes co-oping very seamless. And since it's very point A to point B, and having played this game so many times, it doesn't get boring quick, because one of the things that can get boring with co-op is going through each other's worlds, because you're basically going through each area twice, because you're doing it in your world, and then you're doing it in your host's world, and your host is doing it in your world, and, you know, vice versa. But due to the linear and kind of short nature of Dark Souls 3's areas, it makes it a lot more fun to progress through these areas together. And due to this linear nature, you know, I complained about this in my Dark Souls 3 narrative video. It makes, you know, acquiring the build you want a little difficult. I didn't get to really fully realize my build in this Dark Souls 3 run until kind of closer to the last quarter of the game, but I still was able to utilize my build pretty early because Faith, Pyromancy, Hybrid. But fighting all the bosses in Dark Souls 3, especially co-op, is a treat. It's always fun, absolutely destroying the Abyss Watchers. It's always fun fighting the Soul of Cinder together. It's always fun fighting Freed together, especially. And we haven't fought Gale yet, but I'm really excited for that. It's always fun fighting the bosses in Dark Souls 3, but with a friend, to me, it elevates that experience because in Dark Souls 3, it really does feel like teamwork when you're fighting Dark Souls 3 bosses. Because, well, one, since I'm a cleric, pyromancer hybrid, if my friend is on low HP, I can communicate with him like, hey, get back here, there's an opening, and I can heal him. That's one reason why I always go with a miracle user in co-op, because I have the ability to heal and buff, and it's always super useful. And Dark Souls 3 is no exception to that. And it's just really fun. And I wish I could say more about it other than that, but it's just really fun. The areas are awesome to go through. It's a very solid game overall. And if I were to rank these games by how much I like them, I'm going to do this real quick. This will be a little bit of a jump cut. Alright, here's my actual ranking of the games. So, there you go. I hope you enjoyed my list.